We're lucky to have a couple of keynote speakers that I think are just spectacular. One of them is Frank Brode, who is the Corporate Vice President and the Chief Accounting Officer at Microsoft. I happen to know, because I had lunch with him, that he has a terrific sense of humor, and I hope that he will show it a little bit during the session. I'm not going to ask him to show it during his speech, but he's got a great view of things. Thank you for coming. I hope you'll enjoy this program. Frank, come join us. Oh, I've got a couple more things that I'm going to talk about after you finish, so come on up.
Well, now I have to be funny, I guess. Well, welcome to everyone. And on behalf of all the employees at Microsoft, 90,000 worldwide, all of our partners, I want to welcome you and thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit about Xbrl and the way we see that as both a compliance tool, but also as a means of spreading efficiency and additional productivity within a company. So let me go to flip here to my presentation. You have it. There we go. But this will give you some idea of the breadth of Microsoft. We have over 1 billion customers worldwide. Are any of you customers of Microsoft, either directly or indirectly? Well, I'm glad to thank you for your patronage. We do, just to give you the idea of what sort of influence Microsoft has globally. If you look at all of our direct revenue, which was about $70 billion our last fiscal year, but also what sort of revenue our partners have, our people who go to market with us, which a number of you represent firms here in this room. We generate over $580 billion of combined economic activity globally. So when it comes to complications in reporting and difficulty in terms of getting information into usable form to make it decision-making, not just a lot of information, we work very hard on doing that. So I wanted to cover a few things today. Being the first speaker, I have the opportunity that I can say and cover material that I want, and you'll be going into more detail in a lot of the sessions. But I wanted to begin by talking about what Microsoft did directly in implementing Xbrl in our compliance filings. And it is a major step to go in and change the way you file reports from an HTML basis to an Xbrl basis. Many of you have done that. I think a lot of the Tier 3 firms are in the process of doing that now. But the first thing you have to prepare, you have to make sure you have the right resources. You have to make sure you integrate this in so it's not just a tack on at the end of your reporting process. And you have to make sure that what you're filing in this new way meets all the compliance requirements that the SEC is looking for, because you have your own company's reputation on the line if you have the correct information but don't report it correctly. So there's a full list of items here as to how integration into the closing rhythm starts off, but it really gets learning about the taxonomy, deciding whether you're going to do it internally or use some third-party vendors or experts along the way. And you also have to determine, since the actual tagging is not audited by your auditor, do you want to involve them in that process or not? It's a decision that you have. There is obviously some additional expense to that, but you have to weigh whether the additional assurance of correctness is worth the investment that you have. Then the second part is building a calendar which actually puts in all the key information, because in most organizations, ours is no different than others. We have a lot of people that are very interested in what we report externally, and that includes our CEO, Steve Ballmer. We sit down with him and go through sometimes page by page of the 10Q, and he gives us his direct input into that. So the audit committee provides an oversight process as well. So you have to allow time to have those processes, those meetings and input take place, and still leave time to get the information into your file document before the time you want to do that. And then this is a continuing saga, so the Xbrl education is an ongoing process. The taxonomy is updated each year. You have to continue to look at that, look at what your peers' companies are doing, and also watch how some of the SEC interpretations of the tags and comments and observations that they make. I wanted to just share with you our close process because we have actually been able to put Xbrl into our process and shorten our closing time frame. Starting with this fiscal year, we're now announcing our earnings a week earlier than we have in the past. It'll be on the third Thursday. And we file our 10Q simultaneously with that earnings announcement. So all of this is put in, but we want to make sure, and as I say, you can get into some of the efficiency of the process. You want to be sure that you have all the information available to the investors so you can have a very thorough communication process with those who are most interested in information that you supply. So you have to look at how you build that into the whole process as you go forward. So again, you have to review the processes. You have to make sure you go through a preliminary tagging exercise. You want to synchronize all this with your SEC report. In post-close, you also want to ensure that any late changes flow into the document. This last part in red was put in by our SEC accountant at Microsoft, who is very concerned that someone may have a late change. But in all practicality, you can always say you don't want to have late changes, but it's always possible that you have a subsequent event. You have maybe some input from the auditor that you want to take in, but you also may have your CEO or audit committee, which may have some interest in providing a little more insight into how some of the business segments are going. Then on a control process, there's a long list here. I think those of you who are doing that are familiar with that, but you really want to review and justify any substantive changes that are taking place in the tagging and whether those require any additional extensions or tagging requirements. You want to update your file against any of the SEC observations and any of the Xbrl furnished documents that are out there. And you want to reconcile your instance document to the final filing to ensure that you do have 100% compliance. So those are all very important. You want to make sure you have the great review by all of your senior management on a document control basis. So that's sort of what we've gone through. We were one of the first technology companies to implement Xbrl, but you also have to look at, as I talk to a lot of my colleagues at some of the other big firms that put this in, many of them were almost in a crisis mode over, we have to do this is going to add time, it's going to extend our time period by 48 hours. I don't know that some of the vendors have an adequate service level agreement to help us. You get all these issues that come up, and some of you may be going through some of those now, but next Saturday, I get to go to Chicago to my high school reunion. And one of my classmates is now the mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel. And he was very famous for making the comment during the financial crisis in September of 2008 that you should never let a good crisis go to waste. So in that spirit from my high school days, we said, okay, Xbrl, if it provides some sort of crisis mentality within the company, how can we make this into something that's very useful with us? We know we have to file our documents in that way. So we set up, and we actually introduced this a couple of years ago. It's an Xbrl-based investor relations website. And this is a live file. I'll show you a little demo of it in a minute. But those of us who are in the, I see a lot of younger people over here. You're in the Kindle generation, or you sit with your iPad and you flip through books page by page by page. That's the way people have traditionally read 10Ks and 10Qs. I think what we've attempted to do at Microsoft, because a lot of us techie people suffer from temporary attention deficit from time to time. So we wanted to put together something that would allow the user of the financial information, the user of the information, to look at things as it made sense to them. So we developed an interactive website with about 90% of the content of the 10Q or the 10K, depending on the time of year, which has all of the content from that document in a way that would pop up or provide the information as somebody wanted to go through it on their own. So, part of what we see from that, and let me give you just a few items. We use 98 different tags through this document. We have 15 of our notes pop up and provide details. It contains all the income statement, balance sheet, cash flow information, all the required statements, the segment information. We even included, again using Xbrl, the KPIs that our company uses to manage the business itself. So in the full transparency of sharing what underlines our MD&A, we've put actually a table of the 45 KPIs that we have that are available for any of our investors to see. So, as we conceptualize this, I got a little bit of pushback from our IR director who's saying, "Hey, that's, is this required?" And I said, "No, it's not required. But if you have a better way of providing information in a more transparent and timely fashion," and actually we release this information simultaneous with our earnings announcement, so the press release. So it's out there, so before we even have our investor call, the analysts have time to go through any particular information with that, and actually we're told by a lot of our analysts that using the Xbrl generated information online, they're able to get to those parts of the 10Q that they want to see, and it helps them frame what sort of questions or commentary they may write, or either ask us or write about the company. So what we see Xbrl, at least on an internal basis, as being a simplification first. I think it's most obvious. It's fundamentally about efficient generation of information. It provides information in a single Xbrl document that can be utilized for our annual reports, can be accessed by the federal agencies, and can also be accessed by our investors. There's no rekeying of information, there's no balancing of information because it comes directly out of the single instance document. As far as controls, we have a saying at Microsoft is we want to have a single version of the truth. When we get into meetings, we don't want to debate numbers or what's the meaning of one thing or another. And I think that's why tagging in Xbrl is so important, because by using a single repository of information with a common taxonomy across it, as people pull subsets of that information, they pull it consistently, they talk about it consistently, so the arguments or the discussions are on the meaning of the information, not on whether it's right or wrong. And I'm sure some of you have been in conversations where diffusing arguments, it's one of the easiest ways to not talk about the issue at hand is to talk about the quality of all the different data pieces. Knowledge management is also important. You have to have a deliberate and systematic strategy for the selection, the distillation, the storage, and the dissemination of the information in your financial information. And knowledge management has its roots in relating data types. By structuring information, you create knowledge. You create the ability to discern the actual meaning of that. And then in the end, just enhanced distribution and analysis. Xbrl has helped us file our 10Qs and 10Ks quicker than we had before. As part of this, by putting a discipline into the process, by utilizing a lot of the efficiencies from that, we've been able to move forward. So let me just show you a couple of screenshots, and then I'll take you to the actual website. But this is a screenshot of our investor relations website. It's www.microsoft.com/investor. And it'll bring you to this page, and you'll see the types of information on it. And then by clicking across, you can get all the different information that we'll see in a minute. And just to give you, some idea of the information that's on the page, you see a little bit of the structure of this. So it's graphically interfaced using Xbrl and our Silverlight technology. The actual Xbrl tags are reflected on the document. People can look at them. They can download the information either in Xbrl or take it in Word or Excel. Two products that we use extensively in our company. And you'll also see how some of the related information can be brought up through this process. So let me deviate from this presentation for a minute and take you online. And let me just this is a live demonstration. We do know the Microsoft technology here works, so if there's any issues, it's obviously with the internet. So you can see the screen. This is this is it in its live fashion here. But we have our stock price here. Obviously, when we're down about 0.6% today. Our press releases are there, but we have information from investors on when our next our earnings release is, which will be in September. And we just had a financial analysts meeting in Orange County last week, and all the information, the slides and presentations are there. Probably similar to a lot of what you guys do as well. But let's go into the financial information. So, as in most cases, you're going to begin with information on the earnings release. So we have the actual text of the earnings release. You can see that it's available in any sort of format that you want to have it here. But let's look at a little, if you go to the financial information that goes with the earnings release, you'll see that, you'll first begin with our financial statements. And you'll see, as with the hyperlinks on a lot of the items, they all have different information. But I point you to this little item here. It says click to display Xbrl tags. So if I click on that, you'll actually see what the Xbrl tags for any of the line items that make up this particular item. And as you go through that, if you want to get some information like on earnings per share, how are those calculated, if you click on that, it will actually provide a pop-up directly out of the notes to the financial statement with the information that is there, and it's directly as it is in the 10Q, in this case the 10K. Cash dividends the same way. You get a table when the dividends were declared, the information that I think many of you recognize out of the documents that you file. Well, what we've also been able to do is by using our Silverlight technologies to provide graphical representations of a lot of the information within those, both on, this is the annual information on revenue, but if you click on it, you can get the same sort of information on a quarterly basis. And there's a button that will allow you to get the actual chart data directly in an Excel file. We've done that for operating income, but probably one of the more interesting ones, because it has a little bounce to it, is it shows a comparative of revenue and income for the year or for the quarter. Oops. If you want to, you can snap all these down as well. So that's all interesting. If you want to look at a little more detail, you can click on something like revenue, and you'll get that would be lack of new technology here. I've not had to use Windows. I think this is actually Windows XP. Been a long time, but anyway. You can see here, get a summary of revenue. You can get items like cash return to shareholders. There's all sorts of information on each of these, so you get a detail of all the information. So if we go back and look at maybe the balance sheet, because that's, I was having a conversation at lunch about accounting standards, and I was told after the Great Depression the emphasis had moved to the balance sheet for new accounting standards. So here's our balance sheet. You can see it also has the ability to put the tagging information on it. And on each of the ones that are highlighted, you can get the details. You can see Microsoft had over $1 billion in inventory at the end of June. That's a lot of Xboxes, isn't it? And you can also see that information on goodwill or some of the others, but all the information pops up. So rather than belabor that, I think you can see that's all there. I think the trended financial statements also provide the historical look. We show them graphically and in detail. So this is like the quarterly summary for the last 3 years. I wanted to show you the segment information as well, so you can see both that on a regular basis and an outlook. But you can see we have 5 different segments at Microsoft. You can see the details of each of those windows, server and tools online. We show a breakdown of the revenue, and with the various percentages, or you can see the income or loss for each of them on a comparative basis, just as you saw in the other charts. If you click on, to get the detail, oops, you don't want to do that right now, but it'll show you the information around what each of the segments' income has been. wanted to show you our KPIs, because this is something that, in some of the discussions with investors, they found quite useful. We looked at all the KPIs we were disclosing in our MD&A. We looked at the KPIs we disclosed in our calls, and we looked at what we considered the real drivers of economic activity for Microsoft. And we've provided a table of them to our investors. There's a summary list there. Obviously, since we place Windows on PCs, the sales of PCs are a driver. But what we attempted to do was put a definition of what each of the KPIs were in a pop-up fashion to show the history of those as they were disclosed, what our unearned revenue is by segment. And you'll even see things where we reference third-party data. I was going to go down to our Entertainment and Devices division, which has our Xbox, but we look at software attached, for instance. This is referenced from MPD, but it shows on average, how many games people buy per Xbox that they own. And then we do the same with accessories, which are, again, drivers of revenue in those. So, again, this is all Xbrl enabled. It allows us to do this relatively painlessly and release it simultaneous with our earnings release, press release, and with the filing in Xbrl to the SEC. So let me go back to things that we're thinking of and testing in Microsoft, because I think as part of your discussions today, you're also going to be thinking about, okay, how do we make the filings? What are some of the other uses that we have? But what are some of the future internal opportunities that we have? Because as you look at, most companies have an ERP system. Some of them have many ERP systems. But you have to look for ways as how do you consolidate the information and get cross-company looks, consistency, and comparisons, internally and externally. And I know at Microsoft we use a lot of attribution to information. We may have geography, we may have product attributions, management attributions, customer segment, whether they're enterprise or small and medium businesses, government entities. We have all these different tags and codes today. We're actually looking at Xbrl and modeling some of this as to how we can actually come to within Xbrl, within the documents that we have, actually provide that consistency across and have a single set of tagging enabled throughout our ERP systems and our reporting databases. That does provide linking, getting to a single filing, and again providing that single version of the truth across the company. As we look at things, as far as controls and compliance and checks, I think most big companies have gone to accounting or financial service centers. We have 3 of those in Microsoft that handle all our transactions around the globe. We introduced a couple of years ago what we call continuous monitoring of those activities. So we have scorecards that are updated multiple times per day to show activity levels and compliance to service level agreements and all. We're looking at adding Xbrl as the means to create those continuous monitoring and compliance part of it, which is fall into our SOX controls as well. When you look at all the different reporting you have to do externally, not just for the SEC, but maybe for the Department of Labor, the Department of Commerce, some of the UK entities. To the extent we're looking at how can we possibly use some direct tagging of information from using the Xbrl tags to get into the compliance reporting outside of the general reporting on the financial statements that's done in an audited way. We have one of our financial projects the last couple of years was to develop standardized reporting databases and standardized scorecards across all of our business groups. And we have done that. We're now looking into enhancing those and actually using the Xbrl sort of data to generate that. We're doing it for segments externally. Why not use it internally as well? Gives us less to maintain, and all this leads to greater efficiency and all. If you think about your policies and within your company, I demonstrated in the IR website how some of the definitions of the items goes, how some of the footnotes add a little bit more substance to some of the financial statements. We're also looking at using Xbrl tagging to take our policies our company policies related to travel and expense, for instance, and actually place them within our tools and use Xbrl to pop up the policy around things. So if people have questions as to what are the requirements around air travel, around hotel costs in a particular city, that they'll be able to see that simultaneously. They don't have to go into another system in order to get that sort of information. So we see Xbrl as a huge enabler of efficiency, of consistency, and productivity within our company. So I wanted to share a little bit of that with you today, and I think that we may have a little bit time for questions. I was told you wanted a very short talk. I bet you have one, Al. Uh-oh. And this questioner has extremely good penmanship. They're not, let's see, are you able to determine an ROI on using Xbrl to get better information faster? And does the CFO's office find value in this? Xbrl, if you look at, mathematically you can calculate an ROI. I think it's possible to calculate ROIs on any things. You have to look at what assumptions you make, but you also have to look at what you're spending on current processes in order to provide information to management, and what are the best ways of improving that process. And I think from that standpoint, we've recognized Xbrl at Microsoft as an enabler to delivering more efficiency. So when we look at the ROI, it's hard to value having information a day or two quicker, but we have been able to take a week off of our closing cycle as a result of a lot of the efficiencies around this. But at the same time, we're spending less on multiple systems, and we see that as an enabler to take this a little bit further. So, to us, an ROI is there. It provides a very structured means of getting the information that we need in a very compliant and consistent pattern across the company. So this person says, have you encountered an area in reporting or internal use of Xbrl where there is not a good fit? And I think the Xbrl, though it's been something that we've paid a lot of attention to for the last 3 or 4 years, it's something that has been around and conceptualized for over 10 years. And we actually had our Excel business team had an add-in to Excel that they were looking at that would provide some sort of tagging within a spreadsheet of information, and we looked at that as a business proposition. Is this something that's useful or saleable or marketable? And that is one I guess we looked at. To put that in all the copies of Excel was not really a commercially proposition for us. And internally too, you have to look at the carefulness you need to take as the Xbrl taxonomy is a bit dynamic, and there's been releases and changes to it. You also have to be sure that that doesn't somehow break the infrastructure that you have underneath that. So pay attention to what's going on in the marketplace, because you don't want to get too far in front, because you may have to redo. Do you see Microsoft using Xbrl's corporate actions taxonomy to report your dividend details in Xbrl format? Well, this person must have just noted that we increased our dividend by 25% last week, so very good. But I would have to say that in terms of reporting the dividends that I just showed you the detail there, we're just using standard Xbrl tagging for that. We could potentially use corporate actions. I think we'd have to look to see what better communication device that would provide. But it's not something that we are doing at the moment. But I'll take it back to our team and have them look at that. Here's 2 questions. Are you using Xbrl or inline Xbrl on your website? And the answer is definitely yes. The demonstration I just showed you was all Xbrl enabled. Actually, that site of interaction activity accounts for about 24% of our activity on our Microsoft.com website. So people go there and use that. And when you look at how successful, I think the first quarter we put it out, I was a little bit disappointed because the number of hits we had did not hit 3 digits. So they were less than 100. So we had some questions whether that was the right thing to do. So we did a little bit of publicity with some of our key analysts, and we've seen that take off now. Then the second question is, does Microsoft sell the software to enable similar website functionality? And this we do not do. We've talked to a few of our partners to see if they wanted to utilize that concept to do, because there's nothing really unique about that. We're using what I would call the normal Microsoft business BI stack of information. It's really just the process that you put around it to use that. So it's not something that we would intend to sell as Microsoft. Someone wants to know, how long does it take to update our website each quarter? We have about a 30-hour window that when we send our documents out. We use a third party to put our HTML document into Xbrl with our tags, or to prepare the filing. And during that time, we actually have our solutions delivery team and my finance group actually puts the website together. It's a relatively easy process because once the tagging is set up and the structure of it is set up, it's there. We actually put that website together for a couple $100,000 back in 2008, and the annual cost to run it is probably less than $20,000 today. So here's a person who has some questions on the potential uses of Xbrl for commerce, tax, and compliance reporting. That's my third bullet on the screen here. In which of these areas are you closest to applying Xbrl for better efficiency? I think right now it's in the use of some of the government reporting here in the United States. I think it's the ones that, at least as a U.S. company, we're most familiar with. I have been using it to report, because we are such a large employer in the state of Washington. I use that to report information on our equity awards to the state on a quarterly basis and our employment levels, because it's very important in the state budgeting process. Washington State has a mandated by its constitution to have a balanced budget, and we have no state income tax, so economic activity is of primary importance there. So that's an area where we've been spending the most time. We're looking at also on some of the Department of Labor reports and some of the commerce activity reports. And then the other question is, what additional internal information and which management documents will Microsoft need to start tagging in order to successfully use Xbrl for commerce, tax, and compliance? And I think, depending upon the area, with tax, we've been working with our tax group to help get them more information on it, and we've actually been looking at putting the tags on our balance sheet for our tax balance sheet, so that we can do our deferred taxes calculations and checks in a much more systematic and quick way, and actually apply it against each of the generators of deferred tax items. So that's an area we're looking at. We also are looking at, in terms of compliance, and this is more in the tax forecasting area, is utilizing the tags that we have on our geographic regional income to do our, since we have different tax rates depending upon where our business is done throughout the globe, to forecast what our weighted average tax rate is for the company.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Frank.
Well, thank you, Al. It was a pleasure to be here. I wish you all a great conference.
Thank you so much. What I take away from that, I hope you will take away from it, and that is that you've got a very large, very sophisticated player looking at this technology and saying, I can do things that are productive with it. I think we're going to see more and more of that, and we wanted to give you an example, a specific example with a real live company, a real live person talking about it, saying not only is it being used for the compliance function, but there are other things that are going to be done with this technology.